And we begin this morning with that growing debate as Canada continues to reopen. Should masks be mandatory? They could soon be in Canada's most populated region.
It's going to allow us to continue on the path to getting back to a more normal life until we find a vaccine.
Mayors from the Greater Toronto and Hamilton areas will discuss stepping up measures in a virtual meeting today. Toronto Mayor John Tory admits the policy would be hard to enforce and hasn't commented on what consequences people caught breaking the rule might face. Now, the discussion comes after Kingston, Ontario mandated masks following an outbreak at a nail salon. Joining me now with more on this is infectious disease specialist Dr. Sumon Chakrabarti. Doctor, good morning. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
What are the benefits to making it mandatory to wear a mask in public?
This is one thing, there's a lot of strong feelings on both sides. And I think that the way that I look at it, I think that masks should be normalized. We should make strong recommendations on wearing them. The problem is that when you look around the area, a lot of this is very GTA-centric. And other parts of Ontario, we haven't seen cases in several days. And to me, mandating a mask may be a little bit have some unintended consequences. I do think that certainly in certain situations that are higher risk, like being on a bus, being, for example, in a factory where you can't physically distance easily, masks are really, really important. But again, to echo what Mayor John Tory said, this is something very difficult to enforce, and that could have unintended consequences down the road.
Such as?
Well, you know, when you're going into a situation is you can have two people doing the same thing, and you end up enforcing one giving a fine, and then you don't do it for the other person, and it can just lead to inequity. The other issue is, you know, where are masks the most important? I would say inside when you're together. When you're outside, it doesn't really make much of a difference. And, you know, then what happens if somebody's going from outside to inside? There's all sorts of these little things that can make it very difficult to enforce.
Why do you think some people are hesitant or really just outright refusing to wear a mask in public?
It's tough to me, but I think that there is a certain sentiment of people not liking being told what to do. And I know that sounds somewhat odd in this situation, especially with what's going on with the pandemic. But I think it's important that certain people don't understand why we talk about masks being important. I think it's important for us as the healthcare profession to really explain where masks are the most important. And again, I've said this many times, in a situation where you're indoors, going to be close to people for a long period of time and you can't physically distance, that's where masks have the biggest bang for their buck.
And I go back to March and the conversation around masks and the fact that at that point they were considered ineffective. What is the data showing now? How has it evolved to this point where we're even considering making them mandatory?
Well, we do know that on an individual level, we've known this for a while, even before SARS-CoV-2, is that masks do help to, especially for the wearer, to prevent them from spreading it to other people. But it's difficult when you go from the individual to a population level, which we've never really seen that before. We don't have the best evidence that, you know, on a population level, this necessarily works. But I do think that there is enough evidence to say that in high-risk areas, especially where you can't physically distance, a mask likely has some good benefit in that, and that's where I think we should be targeting.
Okay. And does it matter? I've got a few seconds left. What kind of mask you're wearing? Some people are making them at home. Some people are using the disposable ones. If you're trying to reduce transmission of the virus, is there one that's better than another?
I would say in the public, anything that covers your mouth and nose and is layered. I think those are the best things to use and the most effective for that purpose.
Doctor, thanks so much. We'll talk to you again soon.